I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Christopher, if I can. He is Senior Manager for Employee Relations at VMware, so do not mob the poor man after this. And he has spoken before at Launchpad. He has every certification in the HR industry behind his name, and has worked at Apple, worked at Dell, has always done relations, HR, etc., recruiting. And he's going to be here to talk to us about the do's and don'ts of looking for a job after 40. Do, be here. Don't, leave. So anyway, without further ado, and I don't think you have a PowerPoint, so he is in the spotlight. It's all Christopher. Take it away. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. I'm really happy to be back. I came back very early this morning. I was on a trip. And unlike our friend from the city of brotherly love, I've been here since 1981. And I just never get over those 3 words. Welcome to Austin. So, it's nice to see you all. I'd like you to do me a favor, if you would. Reach around to the person in front of you, next to you, and back of you. Shake their hand. Say congratulations. Can you do that? All right. Why did we do that? 2 reasons. A, physical touch is really important. And I don't want to get into your personal life and who you live with and all that stuff. If you don't have someone who will allow you to touch them, right? Get a dog. Get a cat. Physical touch is really, really important. We need it every day, right? Here's another thing we need. Affirmation. We need affirmation. You see those empty seats? You know what those are? Those are opportunities. Those are people who, for whatever set of reasons, chose not to be here. Sometimes it's because it's the path of least resistance. I don't want to shave, I don't have a clean shirt, there's not enough gas in the car, I've never heard of this speaker. What does this cost you other than a little bit of time? And if you want to leave and go to the job fair, you will not offend me. I'm okay with that. You don't need to know what I do necessarily, but for 30 years I've specialized in employee relations. This is not, my manager doesn't like me. This is, I'm being sexually harassed. Somebody is a bully. Somebody's committed fraud. I know they're selling drugs on the dock. These are the truly nefarious, awful things that people sometimes do when they're not centered. You want to stay centered. You want to stay very clear in what you want to do. Here's my message. 2 points. Finding a job is work. If you dabble, you will not find work. Don't dabble. Okay? Here's the second piece. You're stronger than you think. I'm going to talk a little bit about preparation, how you prepare for this, okay? I won't talk about interviewing, but I want to say something about it. Because you've probably had some interviews, either on the phone screen, maybe you sat down and talked to somebody. What are ways that I could assess your fit for a potential job? What are things that I could look at to determine how well you might be a fit for that?
Experience.
Your experience?
Eye contact.
Eye contact? Interaction skills? Likability. Body language. Actions. What else?
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm. Appropriate enthusiasm. What else? What else?
Contacts, references.
Appearance, references. What else? Education.
Work history.
About 20 different variables, including all the ones you mentioned. Let me tell you what the research has shown for years, for decades. Of all those instruments, we call them instruments or tools, right? Of all those instruments, all those methods, to predict your fitness for a position, the least effective method is
Interview.
interviewing. Isn't that fantastic? We do one thing again and again and again and wonder why it doesn't get us anywhere. Let me tell you something else. It's not really a secret. You've probably figured it out. There are very few skilled interviewers. They're just not very good at it. Sometimes you have to help them. That's what I mean by preparation. Here's what I want you to think about when I tell you you're stronger than you think, you're more capable than you think, you need to affirm yourself. When you have an interview that doesn't go well, what should you do? Well, you got to get over it. You know, my marriage ended 10 years ago. I'm over it, you know. I send her a birthday card. You know, I didn't forget her, but I'm over it. What should you do when the interview doesn't go well?
Follow up?
Get feedback from who? They're probably not going to give it to you.
You can analyze your interview yourself.
What was my thought? What was my intention when I talked to this person, whether it's on the phone or in person? How did that go? We'll talk a little bit about that. What else can we do? It didn't go well. We know it didn't go well. We know we're not getting that call back.
I wrote down every question they asked, and I wrote down every answer they gave.
To the extent that you can remember it, that's not bad. Yeah. What else?
Ask yourself what you can do better.
What could I have done differently? Here's what I want you to understand. Sometimes it's not you. You remember old Seinfeld years and years ago when George was trying to find a way to break up with the girl and said, "It's not you, it's me." No, George, it's me. Don't tell me it's you. I admitted it's not me, it's you. It might not be you. So let's talk a little bit about how you prepare and how to overcome those circumstances. But I just wanted you to understand, don't stress about interviewing. It's the least reliable method for predicting job success, and not many people are very good at it. If you're a good interviewee, you're going to set yourself apart from most of the crowd. So you can get better at this. You can increase your odds. So let's talk about a couple things. Before I go to market, before I try to search a new position, right? I might want to inventory my skills. Now here's something, I'll tell you this is a real don't, okay? I talk to people often who say, well, you know, it's all the millennials' fault. It's their fault. I said, gee, you're right, you know. We should have never had them. Well, let me give you a little tip. They are now the major generation in the workforce. It's no longer my generation. I'm on the way out. You got to get over it. All my kids happen to be millennials. I happen to like them all. I'm a really lucky dad, right? Here's something else that separates you from millennials. Experience and context. Context. When I say inventory your skills, your strengths, think about what makes you stronger as opposed to, gosh, those millennials, they're sure messing things up. You know what? The world that they're living in, the world that has so many things wrong with it in the employment context, is the world my generation gave to them. It's not their fault. When I started to work in the 70s, I'm pretty old, the deal, right, the trade-off was, you come to work, you give us 30 years, we give you a pension. And I think the day I said yes to my first job, that deal went out the window. Back in the days of 21% inflation, now I remember 21%? President Ford, in his mercifully short tenure, came up with the idea of a big button that said win. That was his strategic plan to whip inflation now. Part of the reason he didn't get a second term. 21% inflation. Employers said, whoa, no more deal. No more 30-year employment. The message they gave us was, you're on your own. You have to manage your career. And that's the message we've given to millennials. So if you wonder, why do these people move jobs every 2 years? Why do they want? Why are they me? Because the world we gave them was, if you don't go get it, it's not going to happen. So the first thing I'd tell you is recognize that you think differently and leverage that. Here are some things that you're better at. You're more familiar with numbers. You didn't have a phone that you could just tap in a few things and get an answer to. You didn't have Google. You didn't have Siri. You didn't have whoever you asked, hey, so-and-so, what's the weather outside? You didn't have that. You're better at researching. You're better at sniffing out fake news. If you have Facebook, let's do it the easy way. Please raise your hand if you don't have Facebook. Thank you. If you have Facebook, you read fake news every day. Why? Because Mark Zuckerberg wants you to believe he's not a media company. Well, of course he is. Of course he is. But if he keeps saying, I'm not a platform, I'm not a media outlet, I don't have to vet these stories, the stories are largely not true. You're better at deciphering what's true and what's not true. You're better at geography. You happen to know there are 7 continents. You happen to know Africa, last I checked, had 54 countries, not 2. You happen to know, relatively speaking, where Africa is. You know the United States. You know work ethic. You know, 8 o'clock means 8 o'clock, not about 8 o'clock. 5 days a week means 5 days a week. You know inherently through your experience and your education many things that competitive persons for those positions don't know. How do we serve that up? You shouldn't hire that millennial. They drink too much Mountain Dew. That's going to cost you. You getting a call back from that interaction?
No.
Absolutely not. I love getting up early and beating the traffic so I can be at my desk ready to go. That's the way I built my career. Whoa. That was a 15-second soundbite. And what you're telling the interviewer, the person on the other side of the desk or the phone is, you're not going to have a reliability problem with me. I know how to get here. Here's another thing you know that millennials don't know, bless their hearts. You know appropriate social interaction. How are you? How was your weekend? Did you enjoy the show last night? Did you get to do some fishing? How was your vacation? All appropriate. Wow, you're really hot. Can I get your number? Not appropriate. Oh, this is a bitchin' workplace. Not appropriate. You may think humorous. And I know it goes on. Remember, that's what I do all day is figure out, why did you do that? What compelled you to say that? Why did you touch her? But it's not the way to get a career. Those people exit relatively quickly, no matter how cool the environment. And remember, a lot of environments might be cool, but they're still environments to get work done in. You already know that. Convey that when you're interviewing or when you're putting together your inventory of skills. Let's talk quickly about how you present yourself, how you offer yourself. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, go get one. Why? It's the first place any recruiter will go to see if you're real. I don't know how to do one. Fine. Get a basic one and start searching around for good ones. By the way, if you want to connect with me, you can. I'm not selling anything. You're not going to have to pay a fee to me for anything. I like to help people. Well, I don't know who you are. How do I connect with you? You use my email address, cplastname@gmail. That's the primary way we connect. Oh, I don't know how to build a profile. Don't worry. Go find a few good ones. They're out there. Here's the other thing you need to know about LinkedIn. Unlike Facebook, which I'm sure has some value, LinkedIn actually does try to verify that their news is in fact real. I'm not saying they don't have a few phony stories here and there, but by volume, very, very few, right? And they're almost all based on business, economic trends, changes in the marketplace, et cetera, et cetera. Which leads me to the next point. A don't I really want you to avoid. We have a tendency as we age, most of us, not all, to desire comfort and stability and control in our environment. I'm as bad as anyone, you know. I want to get up at the same time. I want to make my coffee the same way. I don't want anybody to give me anything to put in it. I like my life fairly ordered, right? Stability and control are fine as long as we're not closing ourselves off from the world. When I meet a candidate and I ask them a few questions and they say, oh, you know, there's nothing really new in my field. I mean, we know everything that we needed to know. I've done this for 15 years. I've got it all up here. How does that sound to you? Maybe arrogant. Maybe closed-minded. Maybe not self-aware. None of these are traits employers want, by the way. Another way you can use LinkedIn, and by the way, all these resources are free, you know? In the famous words of John Belushi, don't cost nothing. You can use the internet. I don't have a computer. Go to the library. It's free. When you use LinkedIn, you can read a lot of stories, and here's what you're doing. You're starting to post stories, comment on stories, reach out to people. What's that called? How do you get a job? Thank you very much, young lady, for coming up and speaking. Congratulations on your wedding.
Thank you.
I don't know if I'd harp on you didn't help me at all business too much, because it's a fresh relationship. There'll be time for that later. That's not true. I hope you have a long, long, happy marriage. You find positions through networking. Now, here's what most of us do. I really need a job. What are you good at? Well, I can get at work on time. You've got to do that inventory. What are you good at? What are your skills? Skills like, I'm very organized. I can work well in chaos. Skills like, I'm a mediator. I can bring solutions where there's disagreement. Skills like, I can focus. I can do one thing extremely detailed for a long period of time, etc., 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 etc. And there's all kinds of tools out there that will help you determine what are your real skills. That's what you're offering to people. That's what you're talking about on LinkedIn. That's what you're reaching out to people about. One more word on social media. I have to share this a lot when I talk to, I guess it's Generation Z is after Millennium. I'm not sure what's after. I think it's Z. I have to remind them there are things you shouldn't put on a public profile. Frat parties, spring break at SPI. Hey, I've done it. I just don't boast about it, right? You would be surprised some things that people like you and me put on other media outlets and make them publicly available. Maybe you're a Trump supporter, you post a few of his stories. Maybe you miss Barack Obama, you post a few of his stories. Guess what? In case you hadn't noticed, our society today is so polarized politically. When you say, I support this person or I support that person, the reader draws a whole lot of conclusions. You're a racist. You're for Donald Trump. Oh, you're for welfare. You like those Democrats. Look, you put whatever you want on your Facebooks and, tweet about whatever you need, and, do whatever you want on your Instagram account. But understand there's a fallout. There's an after effect. I'm not saying you have to sanitize your social media footprint, but I want you to think about, what am I saying? It's very clear in my social media footprint, I'm an absolute supporter of gay rights. You cannot like me for that. I don't care. I'm a supporter of gay rights. I have several gay children. I've decided I will support them and all other gay people. It's okay. And you may say, well, you might turn off an employer. I might. But I'm pretty sure I wouldn't want to work for an employer who had an issue with that. By the way, it's illegal. So I'm not saying you have to be plain. I'm just saying think about what you're conveying. Especially when you do starting to get into some areas where politics or religion or social views become the predominant message, employers will look at that. By the way, they look at it. There isn't any legislation that says it can't. If you put it in the public media or the public space, they're going to look at it. A couple other things to think about beyond just networking and developing a LinkedIn profile. You will, at some point, have to get a resume. And you might think, well, I've already got LinkedIn. But is LinkedIn a resume? LinkedIn is marketing. LinkedIn is marketing. If your resume looks like LinkedIn, you're missing an opportunity, okay? By the way, if you're like me and you've been out there for more than 10 years, here's the trick to a resume. No one wants to see that. Even though they're all digital, we don't actually get a piece of paper anymore, they should never be more than 2 pages when you create them in Word or whatever program you use. Why? Because that's what the recruiter expects. I once had a 27-page resume for a person. I won't give you too much info. I never try to embarrass people. For a person who'd never gotten out of school. Years ago, back in the good old 80s, when you could afford to live in Austin, you could also go to school forever. And eventually the legislature got wise and said, whoa, hey, we got to get these people out of here. Person never actually had a job. 27-page resume. Thankfully, he didn't have a job. It would have been 40 pages. Where'd the resume go? On the wall of shame. You don't want that. Is your experience of more than 10 years ago not relevant? It's not that it's not relevant. It's you don't want to lead with it. What I do on mine is, I've got this and this and this. Previous experience includes, maybe 1 line, maybe 2. If they want to ask me about it, fine. But if you want to put 3 or 4 pages together showing everything you had back to the time you left home, the employer is not really going to want to read all that. And you're interested in finding something compelling that the employer wants to take a look at. What's an elevator pitch?
30 seconds. Quick intro. About you. 30 seconds or less about you.
30 seconds or less about you?
Quick intro.
Quick intro about what?
What you can offer.
What I can offer. If I bump into somebody in the hallway and they say, what do? I say, I solve tough employee problems that could be very costly to your company. Oh, I like you. Thank you. Because I don't know how long we're going to have to meet. The recruiter wants to hear that. The person that's screening you wants to hear that. Here's the art of the game. You need to know enough about that company and that role to make sure that elevator pitch is synced up with it. If you're offering a pitch that they don't need, it might be the greatest summary of your skills, but it won't get a response from them, right? You should have that elevator pitch. You should also have, by the way, a couple of key things that you think are important about what you bring to the workplace. Give me a skill that you think you possess that an employer might want, an attribute.
Adaptability.
Adaptability,
Good work ethic.
quick learner,
Good work ethic.
good work ethic.
Multitasking.
I can multitask. What else?
Merge cross teams.
I could work collaboratively across teams, even if I can't say the word. Problem solver, prioritizing, bilingual, natural leader. It took us 30 seconds to generate 10 different skills, all of which employers want. What's the worst interview question you get?
Tell me about yourself.
Tell me about yourself. The mark of a lazy interviewer. Immediately tells me I'm working with a rookie. I usually say, well, let me get back to you on that. I've got real work to do. Tell me about yourself. Well, I'm devilishly handsome, very modest. Here's a better way. I have a long history of adapting to change in the workplace. What employer wouldn't like that answer? I can multitask. I can work collaboratively across teams. I can learn things quickly. Okay. What's the lazy interviewer going to say next?
Tell me a time.
Tell me about it. When? How? but you've already done the inventory. You've already done the preparation. You know, here are the 5 skills I want to just keep harping on over and over. You are a broken record. You know, my adaptability skills were really tested when I did da-da-da-da-da. 2 minutes later, oh yeah, that sounds like an adaptability problem. Let me tell you when I did boom, boom. Why? Because those things, 3, 4, 5, those are what you think, based on the inventory work you've done, can really make the difference between yourself and competitive candidates. What does the recruiter hear? Even the ones that are lazy and not very skilled, even those eventually get it. Say, wow, this person talks a lot about this, or this, or this. Hey, those are things we need. We should probably talk to this person again. They don't even know why they like you, by the way. They don't even know why they like you. The reason they like you is you made their work easier. Most recruiters that are any good have more volume than they can really manage. If you help them by making their work easier, what is their real work? Their real work is not to screen you out, regardless of what you might think. Their real work is to get somebody in. Nobody gets a reward at the end of the day when they tell their boss, yep, I screened out 100 candidates today. I have an open position. How many did you screen in? Oh, I didn't like any of them. Well, apparently you're a little fuzzy on the game here. This is an open position. We need to have this position filled. Help the recruiter do that. Most candidates don't. Okay? 1 or 2 other things. And I'll take any quick questions. We'll let you go to the job fair. It sounds pretty interesting. You're going to have to deal with your age and your health. And let me say that in a positive way. Last week, I needed some new clothes. So I went to my favorite place and I got a couple jeans and I tried them on. I didn't realize it, but one of them was a pair of skinny jeans. And I put them on. I put them on and they fit. And here was my first thought. Oh, you old dog, you still got it. You are rocking these jeans. And about 10 seconds later, I thought, do you know how stupid it is for a 60-year-old man to wear skinny jeans? I hope there's no camera in this changing room. You know, I hope the universe isn't listening to my, you still got. I'm a big fan, and this is a personal choice. You do what you want. I'm a big fan of aging gracefully. I'm very happy to tell people I'm 60. In fact, everywhere I go, I say, what's your senior discount? How old are you, sir? How old you got to be? I'm flexible, baby. I'm adaptable, too. I like being my age. I liked it when I was 50. I had a bunch of kids when I was 30 and 40. Those weren't the best years, but I met my wife when I was 20, and those were pretty good years. So I'm okay with who I am. I'm okay with dressing the way I dress. I like to think I'm pretty open-minded, able to talk with people of very different views, but I'm okay with my age. I urge you to be okay with your age. It doesn't matter to me how you dress. It doesn't matter to me if you have a long ponytail. It doesn't matter to me if you wear studs or piercings, etc., etc., etc. But just be comfortable with who you are. You don't have to look like someone else, is what I'm trying to tell you. Let me mention health very quickly. It's pretty evident when we interview people whether or not they have a relatively healthy lifestyle. And I'm not talking about the health measured by, your waist size or whether or not you've got a well-developed upper body. I'm talking about health. Does this person appear to get enough sleep? Does he or she appear to be hydrated? Do they appear to be able to, motor around the room reasonably well, provided they don't have a situation where they need some assistance, which is protected by law also, right? Health. If you do nothing else about your health other than walk once a day for 30 minutes, Every day you do that, you're getting further away from your competition. How do you handle stress? And looking for a job is stressful, is it not? How do you handle stress? What are ways we can handle that?
Yoga.
We could do yoga.
Meditation.
We could do meditation. We could swim,
Hiking. Hiking. Walking.
walking, workout. We could also drink to excess. We could also smoke pot because, hey, Colorado's doing it. I always tell people, move to Colorado. There's too many of you here anyway. We could do illegal substances. We could sleep in late because there's nothing to get up for. We could watch a lot of junk on the television. Kind of like a seesaw or a scale. These things are good for you. These things probably aren't. When you choose this path, that comes across in the interview. And the interview doesn't really care what you're doing or why. All they're getting is that aura, that sense of, is this person in a state of good health, regardless of their age. I'm not going to bench press 200 pounds. But the interviewer will probably see, oh, he seems reasonably mobile, looks like he's getting enough sleep. He's somebody I might want to introduce to my workforce. If you smoke, personal choice, I know, and you have an interview in person, very unlikely you'll get a call back. Almost all companies today highly anti-smoking because partially it costs them more for health insurance, right? But they also have an environmental image they're thinking about, and they know most of your coworkers are not going to want to get very close to you to interact, to collaborate, to discuss. Do I want you to stop smoking? Yes, I think it would be good for you. Do I care if you don't? No, that's your choice. But it comes with an outcome. So when I talk about age and health, I'm talking about investing in yourself to present yourself in the way that you want. You don't have to be some image you see on television. Be who you want, but control that. All right. One last thing. Where are networking opportunities? What are our networking sources?
Everywhere.
Well, let's be a little more specific. This is a networking opportunity. All right, what else do we have? Meetups. What else?
Training sessions.
Professional sessions, training sessions. What else?
Church.
Church, volunteer work. Perfect. What else?
Friends, family.
Friends, family. What else? Ex-coworkers, a great one. What else?
When you go shopping?
Shopping. What else? Restaurants, etc., etc., etc. In case you hadn't noticed, this is a really social town. People like to talk about what they do. Why did you come to Austin? Well, blah, blah, blah. How did you get started in this? Well, da, 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 da. How long have you been doing that? I started when I was a kid. Who told you about this? My next door neighbor introduced me, etc., etc., etc. Those are networking opportunities. What are you sharing with those people when you meet?
Everything.
Don't overshare now. Not getting to the second date. We talked about it just a little while ago. Your elevator pitch. Oh, that's really interesting. I never met anybody that did that sort of thing. It sounds pretty cool. I've been looking for boom, boom, boom. Keep me in mind. Now, here's where the freshmen and the sophomores fall off the table and where the seniors can rule. So back in the day, when you were in high school and you couldn't wait to be a senior, I've got good news for you. It's your opportunity again. People that don't know how to network reach out and then they sit and wait. I know that job's coming to me. I'm going to get that call. Nope. The seniors, the people that have done it before and understand it, realize you have to continue to reach out. In the right way. A couple of things. Digitally. How many times do you answer your phone if the number is unknown?
Always.
Never. You just don't. How many times do you read a letter in the mail? Some of you don't even go to the mailbox. You've forgotten it's out there. If you're trying to call an employer and you can't get that employer and your solution is, I'm going to leave a lot of voicemails, what does that contact eventually think? What a pain in the neck. Why don't they just set up a meeting with me? I'll call you at this time. Or better yet, send me an email. Or better yet, let's link on LinkedIn, the preferred platform, and talk about things. Because eventually, if you say some things that they're interested, they want to talk to you. And they'll tell you who they are. They're going to tell you their number. When that number shows up, you answer that phone call. The point I'm trying to get to is you reach out digitally in terms of your follow-up. That's what's important to people. Without the follow-up, you're just another interesting person in a city filled with interesting people. Thank heavens, right? You want to become that senior. You want to become that pro. I'm going to reach out again. And by the way, the message in the reach out isn't, I really need a job, I wish you'd call me. The message in the reach out is, hey, I just read this thing about your company this morning. Sounds pretty cool. Hey, I saw this job the other day. Looks like something I'd be interested in. Who could I talk to? By the way, one last thing about networking. When you meet people and you have a conversation, what's the one thing you always want to say to them before the conversation ends?
Thank you.
That's true. Maybe there's two things. I stand corrected. You always want to say thank you. By the way, true, you want to say that. By the way, don't forget the power of being gracious. It's another generational difference, if you will. If you're from the South, really, you're gracious by nature, right? But if you're somewhat older, like me, you tend to be a little more gracious. Please, thank you. Appreciate it. I don't think younger people are necessarily intending to be rude. I don't think they know good manners. Does the recruiter like good manners? Yes, they do. Does your new boss like good manners? Yes, they do. Does every employer like good manners when you're interacting with the public? Yes, they do. The one thing you want to ask anybody before you lose that contact through networking is, who else do you know that I could talk to about this? People love to be referrals. Oh, you want to talk to somebody else? Let me give you a name. Well, I'll send it to you. Let me give you another name. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. I would say one last thing, and then I don't know if you want to do questions or we need to get going. It's after 11, I'm pretty sure. One last thing. First of all, I've been where you are. I've been looking for past 40, past 50. I'm pretty sure eventually I'll get released again and be doing it past 60, you know. It happens. The tendency when you look for an extended period is to assume there's something wrong with you. Why don't they like me? It's not you. Unless you're showing up with absolutely no connection to the job being offered, unless there isn't anything intelligible you can say about the role, it's not you. The reason I started this talk with a note about affirmation and touching someone is to remind you how important that is. And if you don't have a natural support network at home, right, develop a natural support routine. And you could combine a couple of different things. You get your 30-minute walk in the morning, get your body moving a little bit, and you cleanse out all the negativity from yesterday. You don't start Friday thinking about what went wrong on Thursday. One thing we know about uber successful people, people that just get a lot done, they achieve things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is they don't focus on what failed or what didn't work. They don't get hung up on that. Most of my work, all of my work, quite frankly, involves working with salespeople, and they're built differently. And there are a lot of sales jobs in this town. If you're not a technical person and you don't want to become one, look into sales. Salespeople have a different reaction to what I call resistance. They don't hear it, which makes working with them difficult. Because sometimes they don't want to hear me. And I have to remember, well, it's not me. It's their DNA. It's how they live. Every time someone gives them resistance, remember what they're trained to do and what they're paid to do is overcome the resistance. Oh, you don't like the red car? I never liked them either. Too easy to get dirty. I think you're really talking about silver, which everybody knows is the current hot color. They just bob and weave, there it is moving, because they don't hear no. I don't need you to be a salesperson. I happen to like most of them. They're not as cheesy as a lot of popular movies would have them be, right? And it doesn't matter to me if you want to go down that path. The message I'm trying to share with you is adopt that one message from those people. Let the resistance go. Do not hang on to it. Do not dwell on it. It happened. It's over. Now's a new day. All right. I think that's enough. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So, two things. First of all, I hope you did. You might be doing yourself a disservice if you thought you looked at the stagings and you didn't go with them.
I'm doing you all a service by not wearing them.
If you feel confident in your clothes,
That's true.
starting them because you have some idea of what.
That's
it
true.
should be.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
So then, you mentioned the first two questions by rookie or amateur interviewers. What are the first two questions you think an experienced interviewer will ask?
An experienced interviewer will usually ask something like, tell me why you think you can do this job. Or tell me why you'd be a fit with this job. Because that's a much more defined question, right? When you get that kind of question, what it ought to tell you is, this person's pretty good. I'm gonna really apply my best effort. And part of we didn't cover everything I want to talk about. I'm sure there are other things you want to do besides hear me. But part of that whole preparation, inventorying of yourself is, hey, if I had a good interview experience, what are the kinds of questions they'd ask? What am I going to say? And definitely practice that stuff. I mean, if you live alone, get a mirror and practice in the mirror. You're talking to me. You must be talking to me. You're looking at me. Because when you have that experience, you don't want to be freelancing. You want to know, oh, hey, I got to get out these 3 points. This person is really good at what they're doing. I'm going to make sure they hear these things because that's how I separate myself. Anything else? Yes, sir.
A term that you were talking about earlier about what separates us. I grew up saying, you're welcome. The response that we hear a lot, and we broke our millennial kids from that, and they thanked us for that, is the response you hear when you tell, for example, you go to a restaurant, you say, thank you, no problem. That's not an appropriate response. And culturally, in other cultures, it's crass and beneath.
I would not use it in the office place. I know a lot of people do. I wouldn't use it. I know they don't mean offense, but you're welcome is a much better answer. Thank you is a much better answer. Yes, ma'am.
I have run into a lot of the behavioral type questions that
Right.
tell me a time,
Right.
Which is fine for one person or two people, but you can really only have, like, in your head, maybe 5 or 6 of those that you could do. And so I had a situation where I had two phone interviews, and then I flew somewhere and met with those same 2 people again and another 5 people, right? And it was 45 minutes each of
And they all ask the same
that.
set of questions.
What?
And they all ask the same set of
They
questions.
weren't the same questions, but again, for you, with your example, there are obviously some stories that could relate to more than one of those.
Right.
But do you consider, I mean, is this more the way that things go now, where they tell me all the time?
Yeah, interviewing is really not, it's not much of a science. We don't know much about it. What we do know is that behavioral-based questions, so a behavioral-based question is, tell me about a time when you. Now, what they're really looking for is not the answer to that question. What they're really looking for is, well, what did you learn from it? So if somebody said, oh, tell me about a time when you worked on a project team and the project didn't go very well. Well, blah, 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 blah. But immediately what they're going to say, if they're any good at all, is, what'd you learn from that? This is where you can fall off the table because you go, huh? Nobody ever asked me that. You need to be prepared for that. Another question that they often use that I don't particularly like, but it's pretty handy sometimes. Tell me about a time when you weren't successful on the job. Well, I've always been successful. Damn shame we didn't hire you 10 years ago. I mean, you've always been successful. You never had a problem. Nope, never had a problem on the job. What would your last manager say about you? Come back. No. Don't be cute with the interviewer. They're really trying to understand what are your skills, what are your strengths. I would tell you on the behavioral ones, if you just have a couple of general stories or examples in mind, all true, I would never make anything up. Even if you have to repeat them a few times, one nice thing will be when that group goes over or gets together later, if you will, to debrief. I'm looking for a word, can't think of it. They're trying to summarize who do we want to go to the next step and who do we not. If they hear consistency, calibrate, that's the word I'm looking for. When they calibrate, if they hear consistency, yeah, she told me about this, oh yeah, she told me about that, oh yeah, she mentioned that. They like that. And I'm not a fan of having multiple interviewers, but some companies do it. If you talk to 5 or 6 people and every one of them has a completely different story, sometimes that tells the company, can that be possible? Could they have all those different experiences? And they just wonder about the legitimacy. Any other questions before I let you get on with your day? Yes, sir.
You mentioned that interviewing was kind of one of the lowest predictors.
No, it's the lowest.
Okay, the lowest.
Yeah.
What are some of the highest?
Oh, I don't know what the scale is, but for example, your job application is a better predictor of success. And when I say lowest, we're talking about the ability to predict on this day, with all these tools, what's the likelihood that this person will successfully complete this job? Interviewing is the least successful methodology. Why is that, by the way?
It's subjective. It's the staged experience.
Well, yeah, those are partial reasons. I think somebody here mentioned it.
I said subjective.
It's entirely subjective. And that's the problem, which is why you probably have heard of this example, world-class orchestras. You may not have noticed, but there aren't many female musicians in a lot of these orchestras. It must be because women are bad at music, right? That make sense to you?
Nope.
No.
The reason is, usually the conductor and whoever else, head of the company, whatnot, they tend to be men. They like other men. Now, some orchestras, and I can't remember the first one that did this. I want to say Berlin. I don't remember. It might even be a TED Talk for all I know. But one orchestra finally got the idea of using a black screen, literally a screen, a curtain. And they put the auditioning musicians behind the curtain. Lo and behold, all of a sudden the offers to musicians to join the orchestra started to be about 50-50, male-female.
That was a story on LinkedIn.
Was it?
I read the same thing.
Yeah. You know, there's just a lot of unconscious bias that we have, and you really hope the interviewer can get past that. Some of them can't. Some of them can't. And we all know the stories about the limp handshake. If you have a limp handshake, don't handshake. You either figure out how to do it right or don't do it. You know, nobody likes that. The person who doesn't make eye contact, we don't like that. If it's a technical background, we kind of forgive it. The person who can't color coordinate, we assume they're in technology. Their socks are different colors, we think hipster. So we don't reject people because they don't fit our image. We try to be aware of, okay, what are my biases? And are those biases really relevant to the work? And the answer is probably not. Probably not. I mean, there are some gross things you can do, like eat a sandwich during the interview. Probably not getting called back. Take a call from your mom. It's going great, Ma. I think he really likes me. Probably don't want to do that. But those are extreme examples. Most of us don't do those kinds of things. Yes, sir.
How important is competency?
How important is competency? Well, in my book, it ranks pretty high. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Why do I bring it up? You look at a job request.
Right.
And
Skills and abilities.
Specifying specific technologies and skill sets.
Yes.
And you have to convey that and ultimately improve it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I encountered.
Yeah.
I interviewed my replacements, and they were competent, and I wasn't as competent as they were. So I'm still educating myself. How important is it? Number one, how important is education and training during this time?
Oh, I think it's critical. I heard some of your opening speakers talk about certification. Now, You can get a little carried away and get 10 certifications, maybe that's too much.
Across the board.
But don't kid yourself. So what does certification do? It separates you from others. Don't kid yourself. It's important. Ongoing learning, absolutely essential, which is why the interaction on a platform like LinkedIn or in a work group is essential, because you're hearing about current activities. Raise your hand if you have not heard about the fiasco United Airlines created for themselves. Here's what I bet. This is serious, I'm being honest with you. I bet all the people involved in those decisions, including the officers, right? I bet they were all millennials. Because I bet a baby boomer would have said, are you nuts? People have cell phones. You want to drag this guy off the plane because he had the temerity to actually pay for a seat and think he was going to use it? Not here. Not on United. Now the good news is, it just confirms what any traveler knows, which is they truly are one of the worst airlines in the world. See, I can't be sued for slander because it's true. The truth is always a defense. But to get back to the question of competency, it's very important. But recognize, every time you see those descriptions, right, there's usually 2 or 3 that the company, the hiring group, thinks are have-to-haves. And then they have a bunch of nice-to-haves. And usually the have-to-haves, human nature, they're listed at the top. If you're really competent in the 2, 3, 4 that are listed first, I'd say go for it. If you're not competent in any, you're probably wasting your time and the interviewers. But if you think you have the kernel, right, the key of what they're looking for, go for it. They'll let you know if they don't think you're qualified.